when Hollywood's brightest stars took their final bow, their journeys didn't always end in the quiet corners of well-manicured cemeteries. While millions of fans mourned the loss of silver screen idols, some of cinema's most legendary figures found themselves in resting places so strange, so unexpected, that they rivaled any plot twist from the movies they starred in. These aren't just graves. They're final chapters that continue to surprise, shock, and even inspire decades after their deaths. Imagine this. One of America's most beloved comedians was buried in secrecy for years because his body had been stolen. Or a glamorous actress's ashes were scattered across a remote fjord, only for fans to create an unofficial shrine in her honor. These stories are stranger than fiction. And today, we're taking a journey through the most astonishing, sometimes unsettling burial tales from Hollywood's golden age. 1. Charlie Chaplin, the Stolen Body. Perhaps no story is stranger than that of Charlie Chaplin, the legendary little tramp. After passing away peacefully in Switzerland on Christmas Day 1977, Chaplin was laid to rest in the quiet Goss cemetery near his home. But peace would not last. Just 3 months later, on March 2, 1978, cemetery workers discovered that Chaplin's oak coffin had vanished without a trace. Police were baffled. There were no signs of forced entry, and the grave appeared undisturbed. The precision suggested professionals, not vandals. The mystery deepened when Chaplin's widow, Una, began receiving ransom calls demanding $600,000, roughly $2.5 million today, for the return of her husband's remains. Photographs of the coffin were sent as proof, along with threats of further desecration if the ransom was not paid. Rather than quietly comply, Una enlisted the help of Swiss authorities. The police tapped the family phones and monitored over 200 public phone booths throughout the region. For weeks, the Chaplins endured psychological torment, not knowing the fate of their beloved Charlie. Finally, the culprits were identified: Roman Ward and Gancho Ganv, struggling Polish immigrants who had assumed the family was extraordinarily wealthy. The coffin was recovered buried in a cornfield about 10 miles from the Chaplin estate. On May 17, 1978, nearly 3 months after the theft, Chaplin was reburied, with reinforced concrete surrounding his coffin to prevent future disturbances. Ward received 4 years of hard labor, while his accomplice received a suspended sentence. Today, visitors to Chaplin's grave see a simple marker, a quiet homage to a man whose final chapter was as dramatic as any of his films. 2. Marlene Dietrich, The Divided Grave. Marlene Dietrich's final resting place mirrors the dualities of her extraordinary life. The German-American star died in Paris in 1992, sparking debate over where she should be buried. Although she had become an American citizen, fought for the Allied cause in World War II, and rejected her German homeland under Hitler, her daughter ultimately honored what she claimed were Dietrich's wishes: burial in Berlin. But the location was unassuming, a small plot in the Städtischer Friedhof 3 cemetery. The choice reflected both family ties and concerns that a prominent grave could attract vandalism due to Dietrich's outspoken anti-Nazi stance. Meanwhile, portions of her estate, films, costumes, personal effects, were bequeathed to Berlin's Film Museum, with access restricted until after reunification, reflecting her complex feelings toward Germany. Paris, where she spent her final years, became home to an unofficial memorial at her former apartment. Admirers still leave flowers and notes, creating a second spiritual grave that exists alongside her official Berlin resting place. This duality captures the essence of Dietrich, an international star who transcended borders, yet never fully belonged anywhere. 3. John Barrymore, The Borrowed Body. The legendary John Barrymore, known for his imposing presence on stage and screen, had a posthumous adventure worthy of Hollywood legend. When Barrymore died in May 1942 from cirrhosis, his body was prepared for burial in Philadelphia alongside his family. Yet a group of friends, including Errol Flynn, W.C. Fields, and director Earl Walsh, conspired to borrow his body for one final prank. According to accounts, they propped Barrymore's corpse in a chair during a poker game, raising drinks in his honor and taking photographs. Though disputed by some historians, the story endured, blending macabre humor with Hollywood myth. Barrymore's son later moved the actor's remains to Mount Vernon Cemetery, where a monument now stands. Rumors of cremation persisted for years, finally debunked when records confirmed his intact burial. Barrymore's posthumous escapades are remembered as a testament to Hollywood's penchant for blending life, death, and legend. For Bela Lugosi, buried in Dracula's Cape. Bela Lugosi, forever associated with the role of Count Dracula, was laid to rest in one of cinema's most thematically fitting burials. When he died of a heart attack in 1956, his family buried him wearing one of the original Dracula capes from Universal Pictures, a gesture of eternal connection to the character that defined his career. Though the cape was reportedly a priceless artifact, Lugosi's family felt it honored his legacy. He was interred in Holy Cross Cemetery, a modest Catholic burial ground, and the funeral saw few Hollywood attendees. Fans, however, dressed in vampire capes, paid homage, creating a surreal sea of Draculas. Today, the black granite monument at Lugosi's grave honors both the actor and the icon he became, while the symbolic cape remains buried with him, cementing his connection to the character forever. 5. Jane Mansfield, the heart-shaped grave. Jane Mansfield's tragic death in a car accident in 1967 led to one of Hollywood's most unusual memorials. She was buried in Fairview Cemetery, Pennsylvania, under a large pink, heart-shaped monument that celebrated her image as a blonde bombshell. The grave became a site of strange phenomena. Fans reported her signature perfume lingering near the monument, whispers in the night, and even ghostly apparitions. The roadside near her accident also became an unofficial shrine. Despite debunking persistent urban legends, the mystique around Mansfield's grave continues, drawing both fans and paranormal enthusiasts to this day. 6. Steve McQueen, scattered at sea. Steve McQueen, the ultimate king of cool, selected a final resting place as independent and unconventional as his life. After dying of mesothelioma in 1980, McQueen's ashes were scattered at sea from a World War II-era biplane piloted by his friend and mentor. No traditional grave marker existed, honoring his wish to avoid creating a tourist attraction. Years later, fans established a small memorial near the hangar where McQueen kept his aircraft collection. The inscription reads simply, Steve McQueen, 1930 to 1980, the spirit lives on. McQueen's final journey highlights his lifelong desire for freedom, leaving a legacy that inspired other stars to seek similar unconventional memorials. 7. Gene Tierney, the sealed crypt. Gene Tierney, one of Hollywood's earliest blonde bombshells, met a tragic early death at 26. Her mother, Jean Bello, purchased a private mausoleum room at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, insisting on a triple-sealed bronze casket costing the equivalent of $95,000 today. The room was to remain inaccessible to everyone except a caretaker who replaced flowers. This extraordinary isolation effectively separated the public persona from the private individual. Over decades, the chamber remained sealed, drawing fascination for its privacy and meticulous preservation. Tierney's unusual burial arrangement became a symbol of Hollywood's extremes of fame and maternal devotion. 8. Rudolph Valentino, the borrowed tomb. Rudolph Valentino, the silent screen's greatest lover, died suddenly in 1926 at age 31, sparking unprecedented public mourning. Due to financial mismanagement, his final resting place was a borrowed crypt in Hollywood Forever Cemetery. When the friend who lent the crypt passed away, Valentino's casket had to be moved again, further complicating his posthumous story. Adding to the mystique, every year on the anniversary of his death, a veiled woman in black left a single red rose at his grave. Over decades, multiple women assumed a role, blending devotion and legend. Valentino's modest crypt contrasted sharply with the grandeur of the annual ceremonies, creating a tension between his understated resting place and enduring fame. 9. Jimmy Durante, the wife he couldn't join. Beloved comedian Jimmy Durante, known for closing performances with Goodnight, Mrs. Calabash, Wherever You Are, faced a sentimental dilemma in death. His first wife, Jean, died in 1943, and Durante purchased adjacent plots to be reunited with her after his passing. But 16 years later, he married Margie Little, his companion until death. Ultimately, Durante chose to honor his original intention, resting beside Jean. His grave marker bears her name and his catchphrase, not his career achievements. The story of Durante's burial highlights his sentimental loyalty, showing that love, rather than fame, dictated his final choice. 10. Mae West, the mausoleum she never visited. Mae West, the sultry, boundary-pushing star, purchased crypts in Brooklyn's Cypress Hills Abbey Mausoleum during the 1930s, but never visited them. When she died in 1980, her remains were transported across the country to New York, returning her to a city she had abandoned decades earlier. West's final resting place contrasts sharply with her flamboyant public persona. A simple bronze plaque bears her name and dates, with no mention of her trailblazing career. Even her personal effects remained in storage for decades, creating a stark separation between her public legacy and physical remains. The patterns behind Hollywood's strange burials. These stories reveal an extraordinary tension. The final resting places of Hollywood stars often reflect the contradictions of their lives. Studios wanted tourist-attracting graves, yet stars sought privacy. Families wished to preserve memories, while fans demanded access. In death, the duality between the public persona and private individual often became most evident. Charlie Chaplin's stolen body, the mysterious women at Valentino's crypt, and pilgrimages to McQueen's scattered ashes all show that these sites remain dynamic, evolving locations, centers of devotion, fascination, and cultural myth-making decades later. Our fascination with celebrity doesn't end with death. It intensifies, transforming burial sites into sacred spaces that anchor collective memory. While the stars themselves rested, their cultural presence continued expanding through films, biographies, and public fascination. Visiting these resting places requires effort, intention, and sometimes secrecy. Unlike streaming a classic film instantly, finding Harlow's sealed crypt or McQueen's memorial requires pilgrimage, a rare opportunity for connection that transcends passive consumption. Hollywood's unusual burials remind us that behind the characters were real people with complex lives, relationships, and contradictions. Whether modest or extravagant, hidden or widely celebrated. These sites humanize stars, proving that even the brightest lights of the silver screen ultimately face the same final act we all will, albeit with endings stranger than fiction.